Fruity, floral, and crisp as hell. I made a refreshing hard green tea and infused it with juicy melon flavor. It's so good, my wife said it's the best thing I've ever brewed. Stick around to learn how you can make some too. I'm Trent Musho, and this is The Brew Show. Let's make some hard green tea. A few weeks ago, I talked about the 3 easiest homebrew recipes for a beginner, and one of them was iced hard tea. I've made a peach hard black tea that was a perfect summer sipper, and with the weather warming up, I wanted to whip together another one. This time using green tea and infusing it with juicy melon flavor. It's crisp, earthy, with just a touch of cantaloupe sweetness. It has to be one of my most refreshing drinks I've brewed to date, and you gotta try it for yourself. It's super easy, all you need is some sweet tea and yeast to get started. Let's jump in and I'll show you how to brew it. I'm making a 2-gallon batch, but feel free to scale this to any size you want. Start by gathering the ingredients. Green tea, whatever one's your favorite. Water, preferably filtered. Sugar, table sugar is fine, but corn sugar dissolves super easily into room temp water. And yeast. I'll be using Lutra Kveik, since it ferments well in warmer temps with a clean finish. To begin, we'll need to brew up the tea. Take about a liter or so of water and heat it to 180 degrees. Then toss in 60 grams of loose leaf green tea. Give it a stir and set your timer for 3 minutes. Don't go too long, as you don't want to extract too much harsh tannins. After the 3 minutes, strain out the tea and compost the tea leaves. I talked in my last hard tea video that if you let this cool to room temp before moving on, it can help with clarity later on. It helps minimize the bond between caffeine and tannins that can create a haze. But if you don't have the patience, you can just move on. Once the tea's cooled down, pull out your fermenter of choice. Any 2-gallon or larger fermenter will work. I'm using my DIY $10 bucket fermenter. Just be sure it's sanitized and then toss everything in. First up, the sugar. I went for 4 cups or about 800 grams of sugar, which sounds like a lot, but the yeast will chew through just about all of it, leaving a nice dry and crisp tea. This is where the corn sugar is nice, since it dissolves easily and almost instantly. If you're using table sugar, it might be a good idea to add into the tea when it's still warm to help. Next, I'm going to add in some yeast nutrients. This is completely optional, so if you don't have any, that's fine. But nutrients help the yeast perform better and will aid in a cleaner final fermentation. If you have no idea what I'm even talking about, no worries. I have an entire video dedicated to this topic. And if you plan to do some simple fermentations like ciders, seltzers, and teas like this, it's definitely worth picking some up. Now add in the tea. And top up with the rest of the water up to the 2-gallon mark. And then give it a good mix with a sanitized spoon. The amount of sugar should get us an original gravity of about 1.042. So if you want it a little stronger, you can always add more sugar. But this should give us about a 5% or so drink. Last but not least is the yeast. Just about a half packet should be fine, but consult with a yeast pitch calculator if you scale this recipe. This dry Lutra is an excellent yeast to have on hand for a ton of fermentations, so I highly recommend keeping some in your arsenal just in case you ever get the inspiration to brew. Alright, with the yeast in, close the lid, add an airlock, and set it in a cool dark place for about a week to ferment. Although this Kveik strain can do well up to about 95 degrees, so you should be good no matter the time of the year. After about 1 week, all fermentation activity had slowed down. So I took a final gravity reading and got 1.000, which means this tea comes in at 5.5% ABV. And taking a taste, it was quite dry. There's a faint green tea flavor, but since all the sugar fermented out, there wasn't much depth to it. So I decided to add in some cantaloupe to give it a refreshing twist. If you've never had melon and matcha together, you're missing out on a great flavor combo. The earthiness from the tea mixed with the juicy fruit flavor is a winning duo, so that's what I wanted to do here. You could also toss in some berries or other kinds of fruit if you like. But first, let's back up about 24 hours to prep the fruit. I'll be keeping it simple with my fruit addition here. Just 1 melon for the entire batch. For most fruit, I do about 1 pound of fruit per gallon. And I'll be adding it into the keg as sort of a dry fruiting that will stay in the keg to infuse until I finish drinking it all. If you don't have a keg and plan to bottle, I say just infuse the fruit for a few days to get the flavor and then proceed to bottling. But just make sure if fermentation kicks back up due to the sugars in the fruit, you'll want to wait till it's settled down before bottling. So to add the melon, we first need to chop it up. It doesn't have to look pretty. Just get the rind off, dispose of the seeds, and get it into chunks. Next, I'll throw them in the freezer overnight. Freezing the fruit loosens up those cell walls, which will make flavor extraction seamless, and you can maximize its taste contribution. The next day, just pull out your bowl of frozen fruit and add it into a sanitized cloth or muslin bag. A hop sock would work great here, or you can just even throw it in as is, but the bag just makes cleanup easier. Once the fruit's in the bag, just add it to the keg. And then rack your finished tea on top and close it up. It takes a couple days for the flavors to meld, but after about 4 days, it's peak infusion, and it should stay like that for weeks. If anything, the sugars will slowly ferment over time, so if it's too melony, you can always wait it out for it to mellow. The last step is to apply pressure. I go on the higher side, something like 15 to 20 psi for a super fizzy finish, but this is just as good still if that's what you prefer. Here it is. The color is a very faint green yellow, and although at the time of filming this it's a bit hazy, a couple weeks later it's cleared up beautifully. The aroma up front is like cutting open a fresh melon, followed by light fruity and herbal notes from the green tea. And as you take a sip, it washes over your palate and goes down extremely smooth. It's a perfect blend of earthy tea flavor with juicy melon accents. The melon adds back in some sweetness that raises the otherwise dry, hard tea and makes this extremely crushable. On a hot day, you have to be careful because you could easily throw back a few of these without realizing it. Actually, recording this right now, I've had to refill several times because it's so damn good. The fact that I got my wife's seal of approval and a request to keep this in the lineup for the summer is always a good sign. If you end up brewing this one, you have to let me know. Maybe you can try putting your own fruit spin on it, or find another tea that could be made into an awesome drink. If you have any other ideas, let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and happy brewing.